Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good morning to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you all to today's Hindu Newspaper Analysis. A special good morning especially to those of you who make sure that you join before 10 a.m. We do keep a track of all the chats that you send before 10 a.m. also. So those of you who are punctual here every single day, a special welcome to all of you. As always, we are here live at 10 a.m. to discuss some of the most important newspaper articles from today's Hindu newspaper. Before we go ahead and before we take up some of the most relevant articles, especially from the mains and the prelims examination point of view, just a very quick reminder. This weekend, that is 15th of Jan, there is a great opportunity for all of you, not just to win up to 90% scholarship on the BYJU'S IAS courses, but also to check how prepared are you for the upcoming prelims examination. This will be an online examination conducted on the same pattern as a prelims examination, where you can actually see how much prepared are you. Based on your score, you will be offered up to 90% scholarship on the BYJU'S IAS courses. Make sure that you register for this test. The registration link for this scholarship test is given in the description of the video. Make sure you are well prepared and you give this test to make sure that your preparation is right on track. So without any further delay, let's begin with the very first article that we have from the Hindu Newspaper's editorial section today. The first article is written by the author who is actually trying to make a point, saying that India and Indian government as a whole still have a long way to go to control the child mortality problem in India. Now, the child mortality problem in very simple terms means we unfortunately have a lot of children who are dying at a very young age. How is it that we can control that? The author says that there are certain global reports that have come out recently that have raised questions on India's commitment in this particular field. Now, I will not lie to you, there are a lot of initiatives that the government of India has taken in the past few years to give a boost to the health of child, to the health of pregnant women. However, the facts show that India still lags behind considerably. And it is not just India. In fact, most developing nations around the world, most of the least developed nations around the world, the poor nations around the world, actually struggle to ensure that their child mortality rate decreases. As you know, in the earlier ages of their life, especially if you talk about children up till the age of 5 years, they need a lot of nutrition to build a strong foundation. And this is where developing nations such as India have been struggling in the past. The author says that there was recently a report called Levels and Trends in Child Neutrality. This report was published by UN Interagency Group. This report says that in 2021, that is just a couple of years back, around the world, 5 million children died before their 5th birthday. 5 million, which translates to 50 lakh. Just imagine 50 lakh people dying in 2021 before they hit the age of 5. Now, over here, there is one other important thing that you have to understand. All of these reports, when they give their data, doesn't matter if it is an Indian report or international report, you have to understand that the real situation on the ground is even worse. No such report can capture each and every individual or each and every death that is occurring amongst children. So you can assume very safely that in reality, the number of children dying before the age of 5 would be even higher than this, which is a very sad reality. At a time when the entire world is fighting over weapons, is fighting over nuclear energy, space technology, etc. At that point of time, if we are not being able to save the lives of children until they hit the age of 5, that is a very important problem that the entire world is facing right now. The author here says that the problem can be solved mainly by looking into nutrition and by looking into healthcare facilities specifically that have to be provided by the government at various levels. The author says that if you look at India, especially how many children have passed away in India, if you look at it, India's share also is very high. For example, in India, about 7 lakh children died before the age of 5. Not just this, 5.86 lakh infant deaths were registered. Infant deaths means deaths that take place before the first birthday. So in India also, we have a situation where a lot of children are passing away even before they hit the age of 5 years. Now, if you look at India's numbers as compared to other nations, you will see that India is not performing very well. We are performing much worse than most of the developed nations. Even amongst the developing nations, India's performance has not been very, very good. In India also, the performance that we see is different depending upon state. So some states perform very well while the other states have not done that. Now, why is that the case? Let's try and understand. In India, healthcare is very much dependent on how much expenditure have the governments been putting into it. In some states, we have a lot of expenditure that the governments do in the field of healthcare. On the other hand, in certain other states, we have a situation where the healthcare expenditure is very, very low. Because of that, the healthcare facilities are different, and because of that, we have a very different performance of different states. For example, if you look at infant mortality rate in Madhya Pradesh, it is 6 times as compared to that of Kerala. Not just this, even when you compare rural and urban areas, as expected, in the rural areas, the infant mortality rate is much, much higher. All these data is very, very, very important for all of you for the mains examination. Please make sure that you remember this. That is, in rural India, the infant mortality rate is higher. Even amongst the states, we have a situation where in certain states, the infant mortality rate is higher as compared to the other states. The author says that there are 2 main challenges that we are facing. First main challenge that we have is of a child born too early, which is called preterm birth. Please try and understand this term. Preterm birth means when a child is born before 37 weeks of pregnancy. This is called premature birth also, this is called preterm birth also. So when a child is born alive before 37 months of pregnancy, in those cases, a child that is born is usually very, very weak. The child does not have good immunity system, and the chances of survival for that child is much lower as compared to the other children who are born after 37 weeks of pregnancy. This is one big problem that we are facing. Globally, 1 out of every 10 children is actually preterm. So 10% of all the children born globally are born before the 37-week pregnancy time period, meaning that they are extremely weak. They have a much, much lower immunity as compared to the others. On the other hand, in India, 1 in every 6 to 7 births is preterm. So situation in India is even worse. As you can see, globally, the number is 10%. 10% of the births that we have are preterm. In India, on the other hand, it is about 16%. 16% of children that are born are preterm. Now, why is that the case? Why is it that we have these kind of issues when a child is born before 37 weeks? Although there are a lot of reasons for that, one big reason is the nutrition of the mother. If the mother is not being taken care of properly, if the mother is not being able to get the kind of nutrition that she requires, that leads to the issues of preterm birth. The second challenge that we have as per the author is the problem of stillbirth. Now, what is a stillbirth? Stillbirth is a situation when a baby dies anytime after 22 weeks of pregnancy. After 22 weeks of pregnancy, if the baby dies, that is called the question of stillbirth. Now, you would also know 22 weeks is the maximum time period until which abortion is also allowed in India under very extreme circumstances. So 22 weeks is a time period after which it is considered that the child has taken birth already. So if a child is born dead after 22 weeks of the pregnancy, that is considered as a stillbirth. In India, stillbirth numbers are also very, very high. Now, we all know that this is a big problem in India. This is a big problem in most of developing nations, mainly because we have not invested a lot in healthcare. We have not invested a lot in nutrition of the child or of the mother. However, there is one more issue. The author says that there is no detailed analysis of the data of infant mortality when it comes to pre-birth, when it comes to preterm birth, and when it comes to the stillbirth. The author says that government will only be able to make these policies if they have good reliable data. But the problem is we do not have the good reliable data when it comes to these kind of numbers. That is, when it comes to numbers of preterm birth and when it comes to number of stillbirth. We do talk about the child mortality rate, that is fine, but child mortality rate is much larger number. We have to focus mainly on the preterm birth and we have to focus on the issue of the stillbirth as well. Now, the author says that there are multiple solutions that we can focus on, but one big solution that we have to focus on is improving our healthcare facilities, mainly at the primary healthcare level. Try and understand this. If there is any complication when it comes to pregnancy in a middle income house or in a rich household, they have a lot of options to go to. They have good hospitals, they have good doctors, etc. But when it comes to those families which cannot afford private healthcare, they are the ones that would go to government hospitals, that will go to those dispensaries, primary healthcare facilities. This is where the problem starts. The government has not invested a lot of money in building a robust infrastructure when it comes to these kind of facilities, and the government has to work on that. The author is reminding the government that the government had made a promise of increasing expenditure on healthcare. The author says that in the National Health Policy of 2017, government had promised that they will invest at least 2.5% of our GDP on health by 2025. But almost 6 years have passed and we have only reached about 1.5% mark, which is one of the lowest in the entire world. So government spending on healthcare also has to increase. In fact, in 2022, the government spending on healthcare declined as compared to the previous years. Because once the pandemic was over, government thought, let us now spend money in some other sector. Now, it is not correct just to blame the government. See, India and most other developing countries don't have a lot of money coming in the form of taxes. In India, not a lot of people contribute in the form of income tax. So when government is short of money, they would also have to see where can they actually spend that money. Healthcare, unfortunately, does not feature at the very top of the priorities that we have. Government has also opened up many Anganwadi centers where nutritious food, home cooked meals are given to children, to lactating mothers, etc. All of that is taken care of, but still there is a large population that is not getting any of the facilities in any of those centers. Now, this was about the article published in the newspaper. Now, I wanted to share with you some more data which the article does not really tell you. I will share with you two very important data here. One data that I wanted to share with you is about the state-wise data of how much money do the state government spend on healthcare. As we discussed, the center government promised that we will increase our expenditure on health to 2.5% of GDP. If you look at state-wise data also, it is very different. For example, Himachal Pradesh spends about 1.7% of their GDP of the state on healthcare, which is the highest amongst all the states. If you compare it with other countries around the world, in fact, even this is lower, but at least they are higher than other states. Then we have Assam, Bihar, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh. This is a list of how the different states have been contributing to healthcare as a proportion of their GDP. Over here, you will see one more column which says out of pocket expenditure. Out of pocket expenditure. As the name suggests, out of pocket expenditure means money that common people, individual have to spend on their healthcare. So for example, if I go to a government hospital, I will not be charged any money. Consultation is free. In most cases, the medicine is also free. So my out of pocket expenditure will be zero. But if I go to a private hospital, then I would have to spend money from my pocket. That is called out of pocket expenditure. So when the government says that they will increase their spending on healthcare, they don't include out-of-pocket expenditure. Out-of-pocket expenditure should be lower because government should be the one who should be actually spending money. Now let me give you a comparison of India with some of the other countries, or let's look at different countries on the basis of their income levels. If you look around the world of high-income nations, most of the Western European nations, US, Canada, etc., they spend over 9% of their GDP on healthcare. Then we have upper middle income, low income and low middle income nations. As you can see here, India is way below as compared to most other nations around the world when it comes to spending in the field of healthcare. This is where the government of India has to make sure that our expenditure increases. But the problem is that the government of India also has to ensure that all of this data, all of this money that is coming in, it is actually divided between the different priorities of the government. We have various priorities. We have to spend on defense, we have to spend on disaster management, we have to spend on renewable energy, and then the government also has to spend on health. So since the government's tax basket is not very large, this is where the government starts. This data, as I have taken from WHO's website. So if you go to WHO website, this is the data for 2020, the Global Health Expenditure Database. This has been taken from there. This data, as you can see, this is of 2021. This is taken from Times of India. So all of this is updated data. You can find this online as well. This is from WHO, not WTO. This is from WHO's website. It is a World Health Organization where you will see this data. Now, I also wanted to give you certain examples of what the government has been doing to work on the child mortality issue. There are a lot of initiatives the government has started. For example, government has started the Janani Suraksha Yojana, the Janani Shishu Suraksha Karyakram, under which the pregnant women are taken care of, their nutritious needs are taken care of. Government of India also runs the village health and nutrition days, under which certain days are observed to ensure that nutrition value is given to everyone who requires them. Government of India also runs India Newborn Action Plan. It was launched in 2014. The idea was that we want to achieve single-digit neonatal mortality rate and single-digit stillbirth rate by 2030. These are just some of the initiatives that the government of India has taken so far in the field of child mortality. Before I go on to second topic, I see a few questions in the chat. Let me take that up very quickly. I have a question which is time and time again, many people are asking, what is stillbirth? As I told you, stillbirth means any child that takes birth or that is found to be dead after 22 weeks of pregnancy, that will be considered as a stillbirth. That is the definition of stillbirth. So if the woman's pregnancy is over 22 weeks and then the child is born as a dead child, that is considered as a stillbirth. The child is still means not moving, means the person is actually dead. Perfect. Let's move on to the second important news article from the Hindu newspaper today. This is about China's recent agreement that they have signed with Taliban. Now, in very simple terms, the gist of the news is that China has actually signed an agreement with the Taliban government in Afghanistan, under which China will be investing about $550 million in Afghanistan in search for oil and other minerals in Afghanistan. China has said they will be investing about $540 million and in return they will get access to Amu Darya Basin in northern part of Afghanistan. It is said, it is believed by the expert that this part of Afghanistan has medium-sized mineral fields which are unexplored by and large. As you know, China has been trying to explore mineral mines all around the world, in Africa, in Afghanistan. So this comes in that strategy of China, that is exploring as many minerals around the world as possible. China is also taking advantage of the fact that right now, Afghanistan does not see a lot of competition in terms of investment. Not a lot of Western countries are coming to Afghanistan because they have still not established formal relationship with Taliban. China is actually taking advantage of that. China knows that right now Taliban is still considered as untouchable by many countries altogether. So maybe it is our chance to move in together. Because China knows when it comes to exploring minerals in Africa, they have a lot of competition from US, from India, many other countries are actually coming in to explore their minerals. But in Afghanistan, since they do not have much of competition, China is moving in there first. One other part about Taliban here is, since a lot of time has passed after Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan once again, almost every country around the world, every country in their neighborhood also has accepted that this is the reality. We cannot expect Taliban to go away. We cannot expect Afghanistan government to come back. This is the reality and we have to live with it. Most of Afghanistan neighbors have also accepted this. except Tajikistan. Tajikistan has still not established any formal relationship with Afghanistan. As you know, since Taliban took over Afghanistan, China has been the only major country to begin with to establish formal relationship with Taliban. China in fact has announced multiple lines of credit to Taliban government, and Taliban has been getting a lot of support from China. See, Taliban of today as compared to Taliban of 1980s, 1990s is very, very different. Taliban of 1980s, 1990s did not really care about what the world thought about them. They did not really want to establish any diplomatic relation. They were happy in their own life. But now the Taliban that has come back to power in Afghanistan is very different. They do care about what the world is thinking about them. That is why this Taliban that we have is trying to establish as many diplomatic relationships as possible. They have made statements for India also. They want India to continue with their projects in Afghanistan. They have made statements inviting China and other countries also, because this Taliban knows without investment from nations around the world, without their help, there is almost no economic activity that is taking place in Afghanistan. And in order to run a successful regime, in order to have their rule continue, Taliban would need money at the end of the day. And that is why Taliban has been inviting nations around the world, especially China, to invest in Taliban as much as possible. Now, as I said, you can hate Taliban, you might ignore Taliban, but the fact is that they are here to stay. Even if the major powers around the world were not able to defeat Taliban, there's a very good chance that they will not be defeated anytime soon. So nations around the world, including India, have now accepted the fact that Taliban is here to stay, and we just have to make sure that we deal with them. Now, there is one more part of the story. With respect to China, I'm sure all of you would have read about the Uyghur Muslims. Now, the Uyghur Muslims are actually a minority community in China. It is said that China does not treat them well. The Chinese government has been accused time and time again of exploiting the Uyghur Muslims, of human rights violations of Uyghur Muslims, of actually forcibly keeping them in detention camps also. What has happened is a lot of Uyghur Muslims actually get support from certain organizations in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, a lot of organizations have been created which actually help the Uyghur Muslims in China. And China wants Taliban to act against those organizations. This is where China will also get help. Let me repeat. Taliban will get investment from China. In return, what will China get? China will be able to ensure that all the groups in Afghanistan that support the Uyghur Muslims, they are the ones that against them action will be taken against by the Taliban government. So government of China is hoping that any of these organizations that are working in the interest of the Uyghur Muslims are now action should be taken against them in the Taliban regime. Now, if you look at why China is so interested in Afghanistan, there are various reasons for that this particular article might not cover. For example, as per most of the experts, Afghanistan probably has the world's largest reserves of lithium that have still not been explored. Lithium, as you know, is a very, very important component of all these batteries that are now being made for electric vehicles. The lithium ion batteries that are being used and made extensively across the entire world, they require lithium in large numbers. And China thinks that they can exploit lithium from Afghanistan. Not just this, since Afghanistan has never really had an industry, most of the minerals of Afghanistan are still unexplored. As per some estimates, Afghanistan's mineral deposits may be worth $3 trillion, including gold, oil, bauxite, chromium, copper, rare earths, etc. And China sees a great opportunity in that. China also wants to expand its Belt and Road Initiative from Pakistan to Afghanistan to make sure that their connectivity with other parts of the world, with Middle East, etc., with Central Asia becomes even better. So for China, it's a win-win situation. Not just this, as I told you, China also has security interests in Afghanistan because organizations in Afghanistan, such as the Uyghur Muslim extremist organizations, They have been getting support from Afghanistan. So China wants Taliban to take action against them as well. So China is hoping that their Uyghur issue will also be resolved and they will get their hands on a lot of mineral wealth in Afghanistan as well. And in return of that, if they have to spend $550 million, that is not really a big amount for China, considering how much money they spend anyway. The next article is on a topic that you all have been reading about in the past 10 days or so. The unfortunate news coming in from Joshimath, that is the sinking of Joshimath, the cracks being developed across the town, the buildings, etc., the roads where the cracks are now visible very, very evidently. There are multiple articles similar on this topic, that is why exactly is Joshimath sinking. A lot of you have already done a lot of research on that. This article provides you a good gist of what exactly is happening in Joshimath, what is it that they are worried about. Now, this incident of cracks being visible on the buildings, roads actually now being cracked up, this is not happening for the first time. In fact, about a year and a half back in October 2021, the cracks first appeared in a few houses in Uttarakhand's Joshimath town. Now, Joshimath is a very small town. It's a part of the Chamoli district. Usually the population is somewhere close to 16,000, 18,000. Because Uttarakhand is one of those states which is not very highly populated, so in Uttarakhand 18,000 people are considered as a town. But in some of the other popular states, maybe in Maharashtra, UP, Rajasthan, 16,000 people would be considered as a village only. But Joshimath is not a village, it is considered as a town. So in Joshimath, as I told you, the cracks appeared much earlier. There have been multiple such instances. Now, Joshimath, although it's a very small town, it has a small population, but it is very important. Why? Because it lies on the way of a lot of very important destinations. For example, if you have to go to Badrinath, if you are a Hindu, if you have to go to Hemkund Sahib, which is a very well-renowned Gurdwara for the Sikhs, if you have to go to Oli, where people around the world go for skiing activities, if you have to go to Valley of Flowers, or if you have to go to all these places, you would go through Joshimath. Usually, when people are coming from long distances, they take a stopover in Joshimath for one night and then they move forward. Realizing that opportunity, Joshimath has seen a lot of resorts, hotels, guest houses, and even markets being made in the past decade or so. So in the last decade, in the last couple of decades, a lot of development has taken place in Joshimath, and as per many people, this actually is at the heart of the problem. This is an issue which has led to all this problem, because the area, the geological area where Joshimath is located, it was never supposed to see this much development. If you look at Joshimath, it is actually based on the foundation of an old landslide. So when you usually have a big city, a big town, people have to make sure it is based on a very solid foundation, so that when the load increases, it does not really crumble up. But in case of Joshimath, it is not based on very hard rock. It is based on old landslides. So a century ago, there were landslides. So there was a kind of a slippery land. Over this, the entire town was built. So it was just a matter of time that this problem of sinking of land, of cracks being developed, they had to be visible in Joshimath. Not just this, Joshimath is also in zone number 5 of India's seismic zonation scheme. As you know, across the entire country, India is divided into different zones with respect to what is the probability of an earthquake actually coming in these areas. Zone 1 means there is a very low chance of earthquake. Zone 2 means higher chance of an earthquake. Zone 3, 4, 5. So zone 5 means there is a very high chance that there may be an earthquake in this area, and that too of a high magnitude. So Joshimath is located in that area where you would actually expect earthquakes as well. Because of its altitude, you expect high intensity rainfall as well. So there can be a lot of issues in Joshimath that we have in the country. However, even then, despite all those warnings, we have seen a situation where a lot of development has taken place, despite even the state government and the central government realizing this fact. Way back in 1970s, there was a committee made called MC Mishra Committee. This MC Mishra committee of 1976 had said exactly the same thing, that in areas of Joshimath we should not have rampant development because this is not a stable land, and we might have this situation of land actually now subduction and land actually going down. This was a warning given in 1970, but it was never accepted or it was never taken very seriously. If you talk to the residents, people who live in Joshimath, they also blame one other factor. They say that NTPC is also responsible for this. Now why? NTPC, as you know, is a government organization, National Thermal Power Corporation. They are the ones who are responsible for making thermal power in the country. NTPC's role is also taken into consideration. Why? Now what has happened is NTPC has established a 520 megawatt Tapovan Vishnugarh hydropower project. Now for that construction, for constructing a hydropower project in the year 2009, they were actually making a big tunnel. So there are huge machines that dig up the tunnel. In 2009, when the machine was digging up a tunnel, it actually punctured an aquifer. Aquifer means a huge water resource that is underground. So if this is the ground, let's say deep in the ground, this is a water resource where a lot of water is stored. This is called an aquifer. So a place where a lot of water is stored underground, that is called an aquifer. This tunneling machine actually punctured this, because of which a lot of water started leaking out as well. Now what will happen? Just imagine, this is the land under which, if you imagine that this is the aquifer, this starts to puncture, so obviously the water will start to come down, the land will obviously start coming down. Because if the land is based on the foundation of this aquifer, when this is punctured, the water level will come down, the land will also come down. So many people in the town of Joshimath also blame NTPC for this. They also say that our groundwater levels have decreased because of that tunnel machine that punctured the aquifer. NTPC on the other hand says, no, we are not responsible for this. No report says that we have done this. You can also blame construction activities as well. The government of India, you can give them some credit that the government of India has been building a lot of infrastructure nearby the border areas, under which the government of India is building a 6-kilometer Helang Marwari bypass. Now this is being constructed by the Border Road Organization. This is again constructed in that area which joins the villages at the border areas with China. Constructing all these highways, for example, the 825 kilometer Char Dham highway in Uttarakhand, all of these have been questioned by the environmentalists. Many people have even gone to Supreme Court that these kind of projects should not be allowed. But again, you have to take a call between development and environment. At times you think that development is more necessary. You think that national security demands that we build these kind of highways. On the other hand, when you look behind and think that might not be the correct decision, because at the end of the day, you cannot win against nature. Not every place in the world is supposed to be inhabited. Not every place in the world is supposed to be a place where the people can live in large numbers. So government of India or all the stakeholders involved should ensure that now also, if we are planning our 50-100 year strategy in the future, we should actually ensure that our policies are made in such a manner that this kind of situation does not arise again. Just repairing those buildings, just repairing those hotels or roads will not really be the permanent solution, because if we do this, after a few years, we'll again have the same situation. So we might have to displace a lot of people, we might have to reduce the population, we might have to think of an alternate way, but this cannot go on just like this. Also, I wanted to give you exact definitions of the word land subsidence and landslide, because these words again have been used time and time again in the newspapers in the past couple of weeks. So let me first give you the exact definition. Subsidence. So when you say land is subsiding, what does it mean? It means sinking of the ground because of underground material movement. So if this is the ground, if this is, let's say, the land, it is based on rocks. Let's say these are rocks under this, or this is aquifer where water is stored. If these rocks are moving, if this aquifer is punctured, then the land will start to go down. This is called subsidence. Subsidence can happen because of earthquakes, because of glacial adjustment, because of soil erosion. So if the ground that you are standing on, if under the ground where I am standing, there is actually subsidence, the rocks break down, obviously I will fall down. That is called subsidence. Then we have a word called landslide. What is landslide? Landslide means movement of rock, debris down a slope. So landslide doesn't happen under the land. So for example, if this is a mountain, you will see a lot of time the mountains usually break at the top and the rocks start to come down at a very high speed. This will be called landslide. So landslide is different and land subsidence is different. Subsidence is something that happens under the ground. You don't see it with your eyes. Landslide, you see it with your eyes. You see that something is coming down from top, from the slope, etc. That is the difference between the two. The next article from today's Hindu newspaper is about the Office of the Registrar General of India. As per the Hindu newspaper, they have conducted an inquiry. Their inquiry says that even today, the Office of the Registrar General of India is using very old criteria to identify who shall be scheduled tribes and who shall not be scheduled tribes. Now, as you know, in order to be included in the list of scheduled tribes in India, it is necessary that that particular tribe is identified by the Office of the Registrar General of India. The Registrar General of India has to identify that yes, this tribe deserves to be in the scheduled tribe list. Now, on what criteria are they deciding this? They are deciding on the criteria of something called the Lokur Committee of 60 years ago. The Lokur Committee of 60 years ago made certain criteria, and I'll discuss that with you also. Based on the same criteria, even today Registrar General of India is identifying the scheduled tribes in the country. Now over here, the problem as per the Hindu newspaper article is that the government has promised time and time again that they will come up with a new criteria, because 60 years ago were a long time. They will come up with a new criteria to identify who will be the scheduled tribes, but the government has not done that so far. As per the Hindu newspaper article, in 2017, the government said in the parliament that we will come up with a new criteria. Even the Ministry of Tribal Affairs suggested something to the government, but nothing of that sort has happened so far. The Hindu newspaper says that as per the investigation, the Registrar General of India is still following the criteria of the Lokur Committee. Now, the Lokur Committee, and I'll just give you what criteria did they say. Lokur Committee had said, in order to identify if a particular tribe has to be a scheduled tribe or not, you have to look into indication of primitive traits. Primitive trait means if they are still living in a very old manner, let's say not wearing modern clothes, not eating food that is prepared like it is today, still eating raw food, those kind of things. If they have a distinctive culture, if they are geographically isolated, if they are shy of contact with other communities, if they are backward, etc. This is what the Lokur Committee had suggested, and the same is the criteria that is used today. It has not been changed so far. The Ministry of Tribal Affairs did suggest a new criteria, but it has not been accepted. The Ministry of Tribal Affairs, for example, suggested that we should also look into their culture, their life cycle, their endogamy, dance, paintings, language, etc. But the government has still not changed this so far, as per the Hindu newspaper, which should have been done way back. Now, if you look at the concept of scheduled tribes, as you know, the scheduled tribes in India have been given reservation under the affirmative action policy. The scheduled tribes are given reservation not just in parliament and the state legislative assemblies. They are also given reservation in government jobs, education institutions, etc. They are also given reservation in panchayats, municipalities, etc. That is why it is extremely relevant to understand who are scheduled tribes, how are they identified. Now, if you look at census of 1931, why? Remember, 1931 census was the last caste-based census in India that the British had conducted. After 1931, we did not have a caste-based census as such. As per that census, scheduled tribes were backward tribes living in excluded and partially excluded areas. Article 366 of the Constitution of India provides for the process of defining scheduled tribes. This article says, scheduled tribes are those tribes which are from tribal community and they are deemed under Article 342 to be scheduled tribe. The president, with respect to any state or union territory, after consultation with the governor, can issue a public notification to identify certain tribes as scheduled tribes. Remember, the list of scheduled tribes that we have is state-wise. We do not have all India concept of a scheduled tribe, meaning that a person, let's say belonging to Madhya Pradesh, may be a scheduled tribe in Madhya Pradesh, but then the same person will not be a scheduled tribe in Rajasthan or UP or Punjab. So the concept of scheduled tribe also is actually state-wise, and it is not something that we have at an all India level. There are multiple committees based on the concept of scheduled tribes and how should they be identified. For example, we have the local committee which is mentioned in this article. It was made in 1965 that suggested criteria to look into scheduled tribes, to identify scheduled tribes. This criteria is used even today. We had the Bhuria Commission, we also had the Zaza Commission. All these commissions were related to the concept of scheduled tribes. Some of them identified what are the issues with respect to tribal community. Some others suggested to the government how can we improve the condition of scheduled tribes in the country as a whole. The next news story is a very interesting deal that has been signed, an agreement that has been signed between Japan and UK. Japan and UK have signed a defense pact which allows troop deployments in each other's nations. So UK troops can be stationed in Japan, Japanese troops can be stationed in UK. That is what the deal is. Now, if you look at what Japan has been doing in the past decade or so, you will realize Japan has actually changed its defense policy very, very considerably. I'll just give you a small history about Japan. Usually, when you read world history, Second World War, the Second World War chapter in your book ends by saying that atomic bomb was dropped on Japan and Japan surrendered. But it is not just that. There was something else that happened in Japan. After Japan surrendered, America was fearful that Japan would want to take revenge from USA, just like Germany wanted to take revenge in the Second World War. That is why what US actually did was, US positioned many of its officers in Japan for a long time after Second World War also. In fact, after Second World War, America made a new constitution for Japan. The Japanese constitution that they are following even today was actually made with the help of America. That is why it is very similar to the American constitution. In that constitution, America specially wrote this, that Japan is not allowed to start a war officially. Means the Japanese government officially cannot start a war. That is why Japan doesn't have their own army. They have Japanese self-defense forces. The idea is that if someone attacks Japan, they will defend them, but they will not start a war by themselves. So Japan has had this stature for a long time. In return of this, America had guaranteed Japan that don't worry, if someone attacks you, we will help you out. We will give you security guarantee. So Japan was given a security guarantee by the US for a long time. Now what has happened is that now Japan is seeing that China has become much more aggressive as compared to earlier. That is why Japan now thinks that they cannot now just be dependent on USA. They would have to make their own security alliances. They would have to spend more money on their own military. That is why just in December, Japan's FX fighter jet program was merged with UK and Italy's program to create a global combat air program. Japan has been trying to make as many military alliances as possible. They also conduct, as you know, joint military exercises with India also, with USA also. We have the Malabar exercise. They also conduct exercises with USA. Now they have gone across and signed this agreement with UK as well. So Japan is now taking a new kind of a line when it comes to their own defense policy. In fact, if you see here, just a few weeks back, Japan announced $320 billion military buildup. Japan announced that they will be considerably increasing their spending on military, which was not the case earlier, because they have realized they cannot just depend on USA because of a much more aggressive China as compared to the earlier years now. These are the important articles we wanted to share from the Hindu newspaper today. I have a couple of practice questions for you. I would want all of you to try and write answer to these questions. You can submit the answers in the student portal. The link is given in the description of the video. You can see each other's answers, give each other feedback, and learn from each other as well. First question. Evolving the criteria for identification of scheduled tribes would go a long way in ensuring that only the deserving individuals get the government's benefits. Comment. Second, sinking of Joshimath is yet another reminder that economic development comes at a cost too heavy to bear. Elaborate. Reminding you once again, as soon as the session ends, you would have a quiz on our Telegram channel based on the topics that we discussed. If you have still not subscribed to our Telegram channel, you can use the link given in the description of the video. Join the channel and make sure that you do attempt those quizzes as soon as the session ends. If you have still not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please make sure you do that right away, and also let your friends know that they have to come here at 10 a.m. every morning to attend this live session. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow with another The Hindu Newspaper Analysis. Have a good day ahead. Jai Hind.